Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We're here again with you to study the scientific discoveries of integral psychoanalysis, analytical trilogy developed by psychoanalyst Norberto Keppe. Today we're going to focus on the relationship between the destruction of the world and our internal selves. We'll explore how our internal issues, our psychopathology, influences the destruction of our planet, of society, and ourselves. Because health, our quality of life, our environment, the economy, all this is ruled by the minds of human beings. If we do not treat what is going on inside us, we will not be able to correct anything in our society. As always, Dr. Keppe is here with us to transmit his ideas and help create a chain of conscientization so that you can help to stop the destruction of the world.
To begin, I would like to talk about this issue of the truth. Many people can inadvertently be in agreement with an idea which comes from John Locke, an English thinker, this Anglo-Saxon orientation. They believed that everything, including human knowledge, is acquired from the family, from school, culture, that the human being is born as though he were like a blank slate. You see, a blank slate. That is, we are born with no knowledge whatsoever, that there is nothing inside us. In the Middle Ages, the first universities had their origin in the study of what are called the universals. University comes from this idea of universal. There were four opinions as to what were the universals. Some thought that universal was only in the name of things. Others thought that universal came from a combination of sensorial and the intellectual. This was the Thomist orientation, which Thomas Aquinas got from Aristotle. Aristotle thought that knowledge stemmed from the senses, which were then transformed into psychological images. But we find that knowledge stems from our interior life. Our idea is that knowledge is something conceptual, you see. Concept doesn't come from the senses. Concepts come from the interior of man. I would like to show you a sentence of Galileo.
Nothing can teach a man. We can only help him to discover the things that are already within him.
This conceptualist idea is more optimistic. It shows that knowledge is within the person. To understand, in Latin, is inter legere. In Latin, inter means within, while legerer means to read within the person. So what is knowledge then? It's when a person enters into contact, inside, with true knowledge. This is why the great geniuses of humanity, the great musicians, artists, talents, were generally opposed to schools. Why? Because schools give a systematic, stereotyped notion about all subjects. And people often bring forth wrong ideas. Take Adam Smith, for example. His idea was that capitalism would be the best form of economics, because a person who knows how to make money for himself would also make money for others. This is completely erroneous. A person who knows how to make money for himself only wants to make money for himself. But we have to admit that capitalism is the only form that's worked up until now, because it's in accordance with human pathology, not with what is normal in us. People want to take advantage of others. And capitalism is about this. And so, going back to the issue of knowledge and of truth, every human being has within himself goodness, beauty, and aesthetics. In accordance with creation, the human being is good, beautiful, and truthful. Now, what happens is, as Freud himself discovered, people are envious. And so, producing this envy, arrogance, the individual falls into ignorance. What is arrogance, conceit? It's ignorance. The more arrogant the individual is, the more ignorant he is. The degree to which we adhere to virtue is the degree to which we bring forth the truth that is inside ourselves. The ancient Greek thinker, Socrates, said, "We only like what we understand." And it's precisely the opposite. We only know that which we like. If we like something, then we know it. If we don't like it, then we don't understand it.
Or someone.
Exactly, or someone. It's the same thing. So we were created within these three elements that are eternal. Take a look at the diagram.
Evil passes, but only goodness is eternal.
It's because of this structure of goodness that the human being has that we are eternal beings. So, for example, if something is perceptible for human beings, if we have an idea of eternity, it's because we are eternal. A dog can't have this. A dog has instincts, plants and vegetable elements. The earth is less yet, the minerals. So if people have an idea of the divine being, it's because he exists. So if we have an idea that we are eternal, it's because we are. I would like to show you a little something about the German thinker, Max Scheler. He brought us some remarkable ideas. Take a look at the diagram.
There exists a real and objective world of eternal values and essences that are intuitively captured.
He gives us the idea that the human being captures reality. Therefore, we are conceptualists. We capture within what is eternal, that is, the values that exist. People don't learn from the outside in school. We have these internal ideas within us. Look, in second place,
Beauty, goodness, and the truth exist a priori, extratemporally. They are necessary and independent from experience.
A priori means when someone arrives at something from the mind, while a posteriori is when it arrives from experience. But there's a confusion here. Knowledge comes from the mind, all knowledge. This is called a priori, and it can be correct a priori or incorrect. So everything is a priori, actually. Everything that the individual thinks is a priori, which means it comes from the mind and to what is real. What I call out of reality, which is said to be a priori, is experimentation, because scientists, they say things, do a lot of guesswork. They see an object over there and they say, well, this began to exist 5 million years ago. But how do they know that? This object here was formed 1 trillion years ago, or the solar system is this or that. How can they really know that? This is an idea without pertinence, and science in general makes a lot of mistakes because of this. Why was the atom bomb created? The atom bomb wasn't supposed to be created. It was because an anti-human system was created. What is anti-human isn't supposed to be created. This idea of Einstein, that E equals mc squared, which says that energy comes from matter, the speed of light squared, is wrong. Because even the speed of light squared, even if it's squared, it isn't as energetic as it may seem to be. Instead, matter comes from energy, not the other way around, as Einstein wanted to show. For example, if it's an object that generates energy, let's say this glass here, if energy came from this glass, then the glass would quickly disappear because energy dissipates. But the glass is energy. It's a resonance of energy in time and space. That's why it lasts so long. So let's see the rest of Max Scheler.
Metaphysics is anthropology and theology. Therefore, man's affairs are God's.
So take a look at what I wrote at the bottom. Max Scheler
united the rational with the emotional.
So notice that a very big revolution was already beginning in Germany, and metaphysics was returned to its rightful place. That's why there was such a great progress in Germany at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, which unfortunately ended because of war. So you can see that Max Scheler achieved a kind of union. No human problems are independent of the divine issue. Everything is linked to God.
We'll be back shortly.
The most original contemporaneous writer in the world today, says the National Scientific Research Center in France. A genuine contributor to the intellectual treasury of civilization, says former U.S. Ambassador Joseph Gogassian. For these times of uncertainty and conflict comes a work of extraordinary vision, hope, and moral clarity. Brazilian psychoanalyst and social scientist Norberto Keppe writes with wisdom and authority about the things that really matter. How to heal illness, how inverted science is leading the destruction of nature, and what to do about it. Finding spirituality within, structuring a truly just society. There are more than 3,000 books published worldwide every day. None are more important than these. The books of Norberto Keppe, Trilogical Science, leading us to a new world.
Before we continue with today's program, I would like to offer to you the possibility of receiving our book, video, and more information about Analytical Trilogy. I'd also like to invite you to visit our Grand Hotel Trilogia, which offers many therapeutic, artistic, and cultural programs, applying integral psychoanalysis in the fields of stress and enjoyment. If you would like to spend a very pleasant weekend and therapeutic weekend, you can check out our site at www.grandhoteltrilogia.org.br.
In a little while, I'm going to put up a diagram to prompt a little thinking on a certain subject, because currently we know that the world is going through difficulties related to jobs. People in general have the idea that we are in a period of leisure, inactivity, laziness, that work isn't necessary anymore, a time when those who work and earn support those who can't work, who no longer have jobs. And this idea of inactivity stems from France. So this idea suggests that what the human being has to do, he has already done, and that now it's the time to enjoy. And so there was that revolution in the 60s, where the young people walked in the streets following the ideas of Herbert Marcuse, a German thinker who inspired himself in this idea, thinking that work was no longer necessary. But I would like to say that work is fundamental, principally correct work, of course. If a person is going to create a mafia, is going to be corrupt, this is a bad work. Also, the person himself will become corrupted and begin to deteriorate completely. Correct work is farming, industry, dedication to social well-being, those who do good for others, rather than the usual, taking advantage of others for their own benefit. So human beings generally think that they should find something to do that they like. And this idea is inverted. Take a look at what I wrote here.
The human being shouldn't do what he likes, but like what he does.
Notice that the essence of the human being is action. Our affection stems from action, good action, of course. If we have good action, due to our virtue, we gain real understanding and real feelings. It's the opposite of what we think. It's from work that we gain pleasure in living. So we can say, very generally speaking, that the person who likes to do one thing likes to do all the other things also. Individuals who don't like to do a particular thing generally don't like to do anything. Now, I'd like to ask something in relation to this. At what age should an individual begin to put himself into action? Not work to survive in an intense manner, but put himself into action to form his being, because your essence is formed through action, because essence is energy. A person should put himself into action. Listen well to what I'm going to say. When he's in his adolescence, if up to the age of 18 a person has never worked, forget it. Only in a very rare case he'll add up to something in life. We see people at school only going after one diploma after the other, interned. They only do courses, and when one's finished, they do another and another. Or those who only want to study to become first in the class. Sometimes they're first, second, or third in their class. They study to win awards and scholarships. But in their practical lives, they are failures. So the top student at university is the worst in day-to-day life. And those who, let's say, play hooky, but have action, activity, they will have better results in life. Let me show you what happens. Take a look at this diagram. The formation of pathology. In the middle, goodness is formed through scalar energy. Look in the yellow center. Scalar energy is what forms goodness. It's what forms truth and beauty. Now, around that, there is arrogance. There's envy, bitterness, rage, conceit. There's all of this. So the scalar energy is surrounded by pathological elements, and this turns into sickness. Look at the top. sick individuals and a sick society too. Look down here. If you see a successful individual, check out his past. With all certainty, he was an adolescent who worked. Now, many may say, wait, we can't let children work? Imagine that. Of course, I'm not talking about a child working to support the family, particularly a young child who is starting life, like what happened in the first industrial society in England. But if a child, and especially an adolescent, isn't interested in accomplishing anything, he is on his way to mental illness. So take a look at the fundamental principles that lead to infirmities.
Everything that exists per se is good, truthful, and beautiful.
And the second,
Evil doesn't exist by itself. Evil is the denial, the omission, or distortion of what is good, beautiful, and truthful.
evil is mainly uselessness, the refusal of good action. Understand? All evil arises when the person refuses to do what is good. If you don't have love for what is good, for good action, you will certainly become sicker and spend time in hospitals or taking medicines. Are you aware that medication has one indication and 4 or 5 counter-indications? Sometimes up to 600. Look, 600 counter-indications. Consider it well. Medication doesn't solve anyone's problem. Look again at the diagram.
If man didn't reject goodness, he would never leave it.
Notice that rejection of goodness is the fundamental reason for all human illness. And the fundamental good is good action. If a person isn't dedicated to the well-being of his fellow men, he will never be as healthy as he should be. He will be stingy, an egoist, egocentric, disagreeable individual, with no future, even no social future at all. Look, in 4th place.
Sanity is the acceptance of being, of truth, of what is good and aesthetic.
In 5th place.
Through creation, the human being is perfect, and through his free will, he becomes malignant. These are the fundamental principles that, if rejected, produce disease.
You will notice that illness, feeling bad, depends only on human conduct. But this has to be known, to be put into practice. Now, the issue of good and evil is worth paying attention to. Look what I have written.
The kingdom of goodness will come, whether man accepts it or not.
What do I mean by this? That goodness is prevalent. What really exists is goodness. One day, when the world is finished, and life, when even the planets have fallen from the sky, we know this from the Holy Scriptures, what will be left will be goodness. By then, man will have passed through the difficulties of this world to an eternal life of goodness. Now, take a look at a scientific discovery. Scientific discoveries are mainly theological discoveries and philosophical. It's good for you to know that wherever you are with God and with philosophy in your head. Sometimes a thinker comes along like Augustine. He was a thinker from Portugal. He never went to schools, to educational academies.
Agostinho da Silva.
However, He was one of the greatest thinkers of Portugal. Diogenes from ancient Greece. It was the same thing.
Inversion and envy. The human being only wants to see goodness and not conscientize evil.
So now it's important that you really pay attention here on this point. The human being thinks that by seeing evil, then he's in evil. And by not seeing evil, then he's in the good. Now, the last diagram that I made deals with the free human being. Take a look. The human being is imprisoned in time and space because he forced himself out of eternity. Eternity and immortality are here on the outside. So we closed ourselves within time and space due to envy, because of arrogance and the problems we create. And what is the final sentence I want to show you?
Only a good individual is able to see his evil.
In psychotherapy, an individual has to have a certain amount of virtue for him to reach sanity, because we all have sanity in our interior life, which depends on whether or not we accept goodness.
And so we'll be back next week to continue with our conscientization program.